What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you some first impressions for Dispatch. A game about working dispatch for a group of superheroes after you yourself saw your super robot suit destroyed, and as a result you're a bit washed up after waking up from your coma a couple months later. But before we get into all that, this game's first portion released today. I'm able to bring you this video because I received a review key for that first portion a bit early. However, the other thing to mention there is, what do I mean by the first portion? If you're unaware, this game is getting an episodic release. It is just the one purchase, mind you, but the game won't be available all at once. They are in fact staggering it out a little bit, and the full content won't be available until November 12th, which is when you'll get the full review out of me. Or at least sometime around there, give or take, once I've actually been able to play through and see the entire game. Which brings me to my first point of this first impressions. This entire thing plays like a game that intended to be a TV show first, everything from the episodic release to the way it is presented in terms of like dialogue and characters and stuff. And I think for me, one of the more interesting things that we'll go into reviewing this title is how much that winds up working, because while I've played plenty of narrative games, it kind of seems like they designed this one for a different medium altogether, which is in itself a little unusual, as the gameplay elements are relatively minor, but we'll get into those nonetheless. Now, I obviously don't want to get too big into spoilers here, and I only had the first few episodes available to me anyway, but do keep in mind that as a narrative-heavy title, the story kind of is the bulk of the actual game, so there might be contextual stuff in the footage, that kind of thing that you may well want to avoid, and I'm going to do my best not to show, too much of that kind of thing, really. But with all that said, let's actually dive into it. So, as I mentioned, we play a washed-up superhero who lost the suit that gave him his superpowers, I guess you could say, though he's not technically a person with specific powers. He just had a very fancy suit that was an iteration of suits worn by his father and grandfather, all collectively known as Mecha Man. A supervillain killed your father not all that long ago. You spent the last few years tracking him down, only for that to not go very well, which is how your suit gets destroyed. However, while things are clearly not looking great for you, you do receive an offer in the form of a lifeline given to you by a superhero known as the Blonde Blazer. She happens to head up a superhero dispatch network, basically the people actually dispatching all these heroes and leading the organizing effort in something akin to the way law enforcement works. The catch being that if you do this, they will fix your suit up for you so you can get back into the saddle yourself. Now, the sort of catch there is that you're not just dispatching any superheroes, but rather you are working with a program called the Phoenix Program, a bunch of supervillains turned superheroes that you're going to have to sort of help rehabilitate, ideally, along the way. And the decisions you make and everything are what is going to give this entire thing its choice and consequence, as you would expect from a narrative title. Combine that with a pretty star-studded cast, developers known for working on this kind of thing, and you kind of see what they're going for. Now, I'm a little too early to see a lot of this stuff personally, but my understanding is the decisions you make, both in terms of how you dispatch these characters, but also the broader story decisions you'll make, will change kind of how the story unfolds for each of these villains turned hero individually, and also, of course, yourself, leading to potentially multiple endings and some things that may or may not happen along the way. And while that's all well and good, this is a video game at the end of the day, so what does the game have to offer on that front? Well, the actual gameplay is, as you would expect from a narrative title in general, not exactly crazy or anything. You spend most of the gameplay side of things dispatching these heroes, but probably worth a mention, just a few random tidbits here and there. This game is, as you would expect, very cutscene heavy, and to keep that interesting, they will let you, if you want to, do this as a QTE system. You do not have to do that, you can turn it off. And you can also turn off other things like the profanity. There is a lot of it in here, and they can kind of let you filter some of that. And you can even censor the nudity if you would like, as surprisingly, there's a lot of nudity. Otherwise, though, the dispatches is really what it's all about here. Calls will come in, you have to click on them and respond to them with an appropriate hero whose rough sort of powers and abilities, and more importantly stats, lines up with what that job entails. There's never a perfect answer, but the idea is to send heroes suited to the kind of call that you're getting, which will increase your chances of success on that particular call. Now, sometimes individual heroes that are particularly well suited to a job might actually get some extra options in terms of how they deal with things, because occasionally you'll get options where you can actually instruct them on what to do, and that can kind of change the general outcome of this. Now again, to keep this slightly more active, on occasion they will need help hacking security systems, that kind of thing, and as somebody who used to operate a giant mech suit, that's kind of up your alley and something you can do, and so you can hack into systems and take care of things in that way. As all these guys go on these various jobs and earn experience for having done so, they will earn level ups, which allow them to increase their stats, making them obviously more capable of doing particular things, which increases your chances of success on these jobs. Now, you want those successful jobs because succeeding at them will, at the end of the shift, give you a bunch of rewards, including items that you can spend on, say, decreasing the amount of rest time an individual hero needs from like travel, or just straight up more skill points you can assign to a character, that kind of thing. But that's pretty much it from a gameplay perspective. So as first impressions go, I think that'll pretty well do us and give you an idea of what the actual release version of this is. There is a demo available that's been available for quite some time if you want to check it out and see if it's for you before you buy it. But my questions when I go to review this in its finished form come November are going to be whether or not I think the game kind of fits the medium that they're actually using here, which is video games, but also, of course, the quality of the story and how interesting those decisions are, and if anything, how impactful they can actually be on the game itself. I also know there's like romances that you can choose to involve yourself in, and again, just kind of the quality of the writing of all that stuff, but it's off to a pretty good start, and it's an interesting premise that hopefully lands in its final version, but, I just can't tell you that right now until we see the final version. So far, so good. We'll see how the rest of it goes, which, again, should be finishing all of its episodic releases around November 12th, which should be roughly the time I get the full review out. But for today, that's pretty much going to do it. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, by all means, like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.